Section 18 of the Endeavour Journal of Sir Joseph Banks. Journal from 25 August 1768 to 12 July 1771 by Joseph Banks. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Gail Timmerman Vaughan. Section 18. August 1769. 1769 August 1. The wind right off the land of Ulhiatia, making it difficult to get in, though we see a good inlet. After turning to windward till afternoon, we however at last get hold of anchorage in the mouth of it. Many canoes came immediately about the ship, bringing all sorts of trade, so that before night we have purchased several pigs and fowls, and a large quantity of plantains and coconuts. On attempting to warp the ship in this even, the anchor was found to be fast in a rock. At least no attempts could stir it till night, when the tide, which runs strong through the inlet, turned. The ship then going over the anchor tripped it herself. 1769 August 2. Dr. Solander and myself have spent this day ashore, and been very agreeably entertained by the reception we have met with from the people, though we were not fortunate enough to meet with one new plant. Everybody seemed to fear and respect us, but nobody to mistrust us in the smallest degree. Men, women, and children came crowding after us, but no one showed us the least incivility. On the contrary, wherever there was dirt or water to pass over, they strove who should carry us on their backs. When we came to the houses of the principal people, we were received with a form quite new to us. The people who generally followed us rushed into them before us, leaving, however, a lane sufficiently wide for us to pass. When we came in, we found them ranged on each side, a long mat spread upon the ground, at the farther end of which sat one or more very young women or children neatly dressed, who without stirring expected us to come up to them and make them presents, which we did with no small pleasure, for prettier children or better dressed we had nowhere seen. One of these tituas, as they were called, was about 6 years old. Her aho, or gown, was red, and round her head was wound a large quantity of tamu, plaited hair, an ornament they value more than anything they have. She sat at the farther end of a mat 30 feet long, on which no one of the spectators presumed to set a foot, notwithstanding the crowd, leaning upon the arm of a well-looking, well-dressed woman of about 30, possibly her nurse. We walked up to her. As soon as we approached, she stretched out her hand to receive the beads we were to give, but had she been a Princess Royal of England, giving her hand to be kissed, no instruction could have taught her to have done it with a better grace. So much is untaught nature superior to art, that I have seen no sight of the kind that has struck me half so much. Grateful possibly for the presents we had made to these girls, the people in our return tried every method to oblige us. Particularly in one house the master ordered one of his people to dance for our amusement, which he did thus. He put upon his head a large cylindrical basket, about 4 feet long and 8 inches in diameter, on the front of which was fastened a facing of feathers, bending forwards at the top, and edged around with shark's teeth, and the tail feathers of tropic birds. With this on he danced, moving slowly, and often turning his head round, sometimes swiftly throwing the end of his headdress, or huau, so near the faces of the spectators as to make them start back, which was a joke that seldom failed of making everybody laugh, especially if it happened to one of us. We had also an opportunity of seeing the inside of the Ewari no Iatua, so often mentioned. There were 3 of them much ornamented with jawbones, and very full of bundles lapped up with their cloth. These the people opened with some persuasion, and in them we found complete skulls, with their lower jawbones in the proper places. Perhaps these were the skulls of those of the victorious party who died in battle, and the jawbones fastened on the outside were those of the conquered. But for this conjecture I had no authority from the Indians, who seemed to avoid as much as possible any questions upon the subject. 1769 August 3. This day went along shore in the opposite direction to that we took yesterday, intending to spend most of our time in purchasing stock, which we have always found the people readier to part with at their houses, and selling cheaper than at the market. In the course of our walk, we met a set of strolling dancers, called by the Indians Haiva, who detained us 2 hours, and during all that time entertained us highly indeed. They consisted of 3 drums, 2 women dancers, and 6 men. These Tupaya tells us go round the island, as we have seen the little Haivas do at Tahiti, but differ from those in that most of the people here are principal people, of which assertion we had in the case of one of the women an undoubtable proof. I shall first describe their dresses, and then their dances. The women had on their heads a quantity of tamu, or plaited hair, which was rolled, and between the interstices of it flowers of gardenia were stuck, making a headdress truly elegant. Their shoulders, arms, and breasts, as low as their arms, were bare. Below this they were covered with black cloth, and under each shoulder was placed a bunch of black feathers, as much as Our Lady's nosegays or bouquets. On their hips rested a quantity of cloth, pleated very full, which reached almost up to their arms, and fell down below into long petticoats, reaching below their feet, which they managed with as much dexterity as our opera dancers could have done. These pleats were brown and white alternately, but the petticoats were all white. In this dress they advanced sideways, keeping excellent time to the drums, which beat brisk and loud. They soon began to shake their hips, giving the folds of cloth that lay upon them a very quick motion, which was continued during the whole dance. They sometimes standing, sometimes sitting, and sometimes resting on their knees and elbows, and generally moving their fingers with a quickness scarce to be imagined. The chief entertainment of the spectators seemed, however, to arise from the lascivious motions they often made use of, which were highly so, more indeed than I shall attempt to describe. One of these girls had in her ear 3 pearls, one of them very large, but so foul that it was worth scarcely anything. The other 2 were as large as a middling pea, and of a good and clear water, as well as shape. For these I offered at different times any price the owner would have, but she would not hear of parting with them. I offered once the price of 4 hogs down, and anything she would ask beside, but she would not hear of it. Indeed, they have always set a value upon their pearls, tolerably good, almost equal to our valuation, supposing them, as they always are, spoiled by the drilling. Between the dances of the women, for they sometimes rested, the men acted a kind of interlude in which they spoke as well as danced. We were not, however, sufficiently versed in their language to be able to give an account of the drama. 1769, August 4. We had often heard Tobias speak of lands belonging to him, which had been taken away by the Bolo Bolo men. These, he tells us now, are situate in the very bay where the ship lies. On going ashore this morning, the inhabitants confirmed what he has told us, and showed us several different whenua, which they all acknowledged belong of right to him. The largest number of the people here are, it seems, the so much feared Bolo Bolo men, and we are told that tomorrow Opuni, the king of that island, will come to visit us. We are much inclined to receive him civilly, as we have met with so civil a reception from his subjects. Dr. Solander and myself go upon the hills, accompanied by several Indians, who carried us by excellent paths so high that we saw plainly the other side of the island, and the passage through which the ship went out of the reef, between the islets of Opororo and Tamu. Our walk did not turn out very profitably, as we found only 2 plants that we had not seen before. In coming down again, we saw the game that the Indians call irohwao, which is no more than pitching a kind of light lances headed with hard wood at a mark. Of this amusement they seemed to be very fond, but none that we saw now excelled in doing it. Not above 1 in 12 striking the mark, which was the bole of a plantain tree, about 20 yards distant. 1769, August 5. Went in the boat to the southward with the captain, etc. Saw 2 inlets in the reef and good harbours within them. They were both situate close to islets, one having one on each side of it. Indeed, in general, I have seen breaches in reefs almost wherever there are islands upon them. The people all along shore were very poor, so much so that after all our day's work we did not procure either hog or fowl, nor indeed did we see either. 1769, August 6. Yesterday Opuni, the king of Bolo Bolo, sent his contes and a present of hogs and fowls to the king of the ship, sending word also that he would in person wait upon him today. We therefore all hands stayed at home, in hopes of the honour of his Excellency's visit. We were disappointed in our expectations, not disagreeably, for instead of his Majesty came 3 handsome lively girls, who stayed with us the morning, and took off all regret for the want of his Majesty's company. In the evening we all went to see the great king, and thank him for his civilities, particularly of this morning. The king of the Tatatoas, or clubmen, who have conquered this, and are the terror of all other islands, we expected to see young, lively, handsome, etc., etc. But how were we disappointed when we were led to an old, decrepit, half-blind man, who seemed to have scarce reason enough left to send hogs, much less gallantry enough to send ladies. 1769, August 7. We learned from Opuni yesterday that his chief residence was at Otaha. To this place he proposed to accompany us. As today Captain Cook and Dr. Solander went upon the expedition, myself stayed at home. They proceeded with Opuni and all his train, many canoes, to a bay in Otaha, called Obutobuto, His Majesty's chief residence. Here the houses were very large and good, and the canoes also finer than any the gentlemen had seen before. Such a prelude made them expect much from the owners of so fine houses. A boatload of hogs was the least they thought of, especially as they had plenty of Spartan money to pay for them. But alas, the gentlemen who fatigued themselves with building the houses chose to refresh themselves with eating the hogs, so that after the whole day was spent, a small number only were procured in proportion to what was expected. Myself stayed at home this morning and traded for some provisions and curiosities. In the morning took Mr. Parkinson to the Hiva, that he might sketch the dresses. The dancing was exactly the same as I had seen it before, except that another woman was added to the two I saw before. The interludes of the men were varied. They gave us 5 or 6 which resembled much the drama of the English stage dance. Most of my friends were constantly at the Hiva. Their names I set down, and relationships, as they are chiefly one family. 1. Tiari no Hororo, a king or chief. 2. Fauna Utoa, wife to 1. 3. Otubuai, sister to 2. 4. Orai, elder brother to 2. 5. Tetuanui, younger brother to 2. 6. Otahamina, dancing girl. 7. Urua Toa Do. 8. Matiahia, father to 1. 9. Opipi, mother to 1. 1769, August 8. Dr. Solander and self went along shore to gather plants, buy hogs, or anything else that might occur. We took our course towards the Hiva, and at last came up to it. It has gradually moved from very near us till it is now 2 leagues off. Tupaya tells us that it will, in this manner, move gradually round the island. Our friends received us, as is usual, with all manner of civility, dancing, and giving us, after the amusement, a very good dinner, as well as offering us a quantity of their cloth by way of present, which we should have accepted had we not been full stocked with it before. We now understood a little more of the interludes than we had formerly done. I shall describe one as well as I can. The men dancers were divided into 2 parties, differing in the colour of their clothes, one brown, the other white. The chief of the brown ones gave a basket of meat to the rest of his servants, that they might take care of it. The white represented thieves, who attempted to steal it several times, dancing all the time. Several different expedients they make use of without success, till at last they found the watchman asleep. They then gently went up to them, and lifting them off from the basket, which for security's sake they had placed in the middle of them, they went off with their prize. The others woke and danced, but seemed to show little regret for their loss, or indeed hardly to miss the basket at all. 1769, August 9. This morn spent in trading with the canoes for whatever they would bring, resolving to sail as soon as they left off to bring provision, which about noon they did, and we again launched out into the ocean in search of what chance and Tupaya might direct us to. 1769, August 10. Myself sick all day. 1769, August 11. Tupaya talks of an island which he calls Manua. He says that we shall see it tomorrow morning, but points out its place upon the weather bow, so we shall probably go to leeward of it. 1769, August 12. Get rid of seasickness today. Tupaya's island not in sight. He tells us that it is Itpa. We are past it, for the same word is used by them for the setting of the sun or the leaving behind of an island. He says, however, that tomorrow or next day we shall see another, which he calls Ohetera. 1769, August 13. At noon today, high land in sight, which proved to be Tupaya's island of Ohetera. At night we were close in with it. He said that there were many other islands from south to southwest of us, most of their names beginning with Ohete. None, however, were in sight. Many albacores have been about the ship all the evening. Tupaya took one, and had not his rod broke, would probably have taken many. He used an Indian fishhook made of mother of pearl, so that it served at the same time both for hook and bait. 1769, August 14. Close under the land, a boat was sent from the ship, in which Dr. Solander and myself took a passage. She rowed right in for the land, on which several natives appeared, armed with long lances. The boat standing along shore, not intending to land, till she got round the next point, made them, I believe, think that we were afraid of them. The main body of about 60 sat down upon the shore, and sent 2 of their number forwards, who, after walking some time abreast of us, leapt into the water, intending to swim to us, but were soon left behind. 2 more then attempted the same thing, and were in like manner left behind. A single man then ran forwards, and taking good start of the boat, fetched her easily, but when he was alongside, I could not persuade the officer of the boat to take him, notwithstanding it was so fair an opportunity of making friends with a people who certainly looked upon us as their enemies. He was therefore left behind, as was another who followed his example. We now came round a point where all our followers left us. We had opened a large bay, at the bottom of which we saw another body of men, armed like the former. Here we hoped to land, and push towards the place. The natives had pushed off a canoe, which came out to meet us. As soon as it approached us, we lay upon our oars, and called to them that we were friends, and would give them nails if they would come to us. They, after very little hesitation, came up to the boat's stern, and took the nails that were given them, seemingly with great satisfaction, but in less than a minute seemed to have formed a design of boarding our boat and taking her, in pursuance of which 3 leapt almost in an instant into our boat, and the others brought up the canoe, which had flown off a little, intending probably to follow their countrymen's example. The first who came in the boat was close to me. He instantly snatched my powder horn out of my pocket, which I immediately laid hold of, and wrenched out of his hand, not without some difficulty. I then laid my hand on his breast and attempted to shove him overboard, but he was too strong for me and kept his place. The officer ordered a musket to be fired over their heads, his own having misfired. 2 were immediately fired, and they all instantly leapt into the water. One of our people, however, inconsiderately levelled a 3rd at one of them, who was swimming, and the ball grazed his forehead, but I believe did him no material harm, as he recovered his boat and stood up in her, as active as ever. The canoe now stood for the shore, where were a large number of people collected, I believe 200. Our boat also pulled in, but found the land guarded all around with a shoal upon which the sea broke much, so was obliged to go along shore in hopes of finding a more convenient landing place. We saw the canoe go ashore, where the people were assembled, who came down to her seemingly very eager to inquire into our behaviour to them. Soon after, a single man came along shore, armed with a long lance. He came abreast of the boat, and then began to dance, and shake his weapon, calling out in a very shrill voice, which we understood from Tupaia was a defiance sent from the people. We rowed along shore, and he attended us some time. We found it, however, impracticable to land, and as for the gentleman's tricks, we gave ourselves very little concern about them. We therefore resolved to return to the bay, and try if it would be practicable to land where the canoe did, hoping that if we should not, the people would at least come and make peace, either on the shoal or in their canoes, of which we saw only 2 in the island, which was one more than Tupaia allowed them, who said they had but 1. As we rowed gently along shore, our defying champion was joined by another, likewise armed with a lance, and dressed with a large cap of tail feathers of tropic birds, and his body covered, as indeed many of them were, with stripes of different coloured cloths, yellow, red, and brown. He, who we now called Harlequin, danced as the other had done, only with much more nimbleness and dexterity. These 2 were soon after joined by an older-looking man, likewise armed, who came gravely down to the beach, and hailing us asked from whence we came. Tupaia answered him from Tahiti. The 3 then went peaceably along the shore till the boat came to a shoal upon which a few people were collected. They talked together, and soon after began to poora, or pray, very loud, to which Tupaia made his responses, but continued to tell us that they were not our friends. We after this entered into a parley with them, telling them that if they would lay by their arms, which were lances and clubs, we would come ashore and truck with them for whatever they would bring. They agreed, but upon condition that we should lay down our muskets, an article which we did not think fit to comply with, so our negotiation dropped for the present at least. After a little time, however, they took courage and came nearer to the boat, near enough to begin to trade, which they did very fairly for a small quantity of cloth and some of their weapons. But as they gave us no hopes of provisions or indeed anything else, unless we would venture through a narrow channel to the shore, we put off the boat and left them. In this expedition we laboured under many disadvantages. We left the ship in a hurry, taking with us no kind of arms but our muskets, which without bayonets would have made but a poor resistance against these people's weapons, all meant to fight hand to hand. But what was worse of all was the difficulty of landing, which we could not do without wetting ourselves and arms, unless we had ventured through the passage I have spoke of, which was so small that though the weather was perfectly fine, the sea often broke right across it. So that had we gone in, and the least surf rose, we could never have got out again, but must have remained the night in shoal water, liable to any stratagems that our enemies might devise, ill-furnished as we were to oppose their boarding us by swimming, to which we were always liable. The island, to all appearance that we saw, was more barren than anything we have seen in these seas, the chief produce seeming to be étain, the wood of which their weapons were made. Indeed, everywhere along shore, where we saw plantations, they were covered by trees of this kind, planted between them and the sea. It is without a reef, and the ground in the bay we were in so foul and corally, that though a ship might come almost close to the shore, she could not possibly anchor. The water was clearer than I ever saw it. I saw distinctly the ground at 25 fathoms depth. The people seemed strong, lusty, and well made, but were rather browner than those we have left behind. They were not tattooed on their backsides, but instead of that had black marks about as broad as my hand under their armpits, the sides of which were deeply indented. They also had circles of smaller ones round their arms and legs. Their dress was indeed most singular, as well as the cloth with which they were dressed, which I shall first describe. It was made of the same materials as the inhabitants of the other islands make use of, and generally dyed of a very bright and deep yellow. Upon this was, on some sorts, spread a composition which covered it like oil colour or varnish. It was either red or of a dark lead colour. Upon this again was painted stripes in many different patterns, with infinite regularity, much in the same way as some lute-string silks in England are wove, all the straight lines upon them drawn with such accuracy that we were almost in doubt whether or not they were stamped on with some kind of press. The red cloth was painted in this manner with black, the lead coloured with white. Of this cloth, generally the lead coloured, they were on a short jacket that reached about their knees, made of one piece, with a hole through which they put their heads, the sides of which hole was contrary to anything I have seen before, stitched with long stitches. This was confined to their bodies by a piece of yellow cloth, which passed behind their necks and came across their breasts in two broad stripes, crossing each other. It was then collected round their waist in the form of a belt, under which was another of red cloth, so that the whole made a very gay and warlike appearance. Some had on their heads caps, as before described, made of the tails of tropic birds, but they did not become them so well as a piece of white or lead-coloured cloth, which the most of them had wound on like a small turban. Their arms consisted of long lances made of the etoa or hardwood, well polished and sharpened at one end. Of these there were some near 20 feet long, and scarce so thick as 3 fingers. They had also clubs or pikes of the same wood, about 7 feet long, well polished and sharpened at one end into a broad point. How expert they may be in the use of these weapons we cannot tell, but the weapons themselves seem more intended for show than use. As the lance was not pointed with the stings of stingrays, and the clubs or pikes, which must do more execution by their weight than their sharpness, were not more than half so heavy as the smallest I have seen in the other islands. Defensive weapons I saw none. They, however, guarded themselves against such weapons as their own by mats folded and laid upon their breasts and bellies, under their outer cloths. Of the few things we saw among these people, every one was ornamented, infinitely superior to anything we had before seen. Their cloth was better coloured, as well as nicely painted. Their clubs were better cut and polished. The canoe which we saw, though a very small and very narrow one, was nevertheless carved and ornamented very highly. One thing particularly in her seemed to be calculated rather for the ornaments of the thing, that was never intended to go into the water than a boat, which was 2 lines of small white feathers that were placed on the outside of the canoe, which were, when we saw them, totally wet with the water. After leaving these inhospitable people, we stood to the southward as usual, and had in the evening a great dew which wetted everything. See Manners and Customs of South Sea Islands below. 1769 August 15. Crossed tropic. Crossed the tropic this morn. Wind north and weather very pleasant. At night, wind rather variable. 1769 August 16. Soon after we rose this morn we were told that land was in sight. It proved to be a cloud, but at first sight was so like land that it deceived every man in the ship. Even Tupaia gave it a name. The ship bore down towards it, but in about 3 hours all hands were convinced that it was but a cloud. 1769, August 17. A heavy swell from the southwest all day, so we are not yet under the lee of the continent. In the even, no wind. Our taros, roots of the yam, called in the West Indies cocoas, failed us today. Many of them were rotten. They would probably have kept longer had we had either time or opportunity of drying them well, but I believe that at the best they are very much inferior to either yams or potatoes for keeping. 1769, August 18. Southeast swell continues today, with little wind at north. 1769, August 19. Weather and swell much as yesterday. Some of our people tell me that they have seen albatrosses both yesterday and the day before. 1769, August 20. A large albatross about the ship most of the day. Little wind, the swell less than yesterday, but still troublesome. At night, a heavy dew. 1769, August 21. A fine breeze at northwest. Some pintado birds, Procelaria capensis, about the ship. This day our plantains failed us. They were all eat, not one ever was rotten. Indeed, since we left Ulhiatia, the hogs have almost entirely subsisted upon them, of which we have no small number, who I fear will feel the loss of them most sensibly, as not one, I believe, has yet eat the smallest portion of English food. 1769, August 22. Fresh breeze of wind today, but little sea. Several albatrosses and pintado birds about the ship today. 1769, August 23. Light breeze. Our hogs and fowls begin to die apace. Of the latter a great many. Want of proper food and cold, which now begins to pinch even us, as I suppose the cause. Afternoon calm, many albatrosses and pintado birds about the ship. 1769, August 24. The morning was calm. About 9 it began to flow fresh with rain, which came on without the least warning. At the same time a waterspout was seen to leeward. It appeared to me so inconsiderable that had I not been showed it, I should not have particularly noticed the appearance. It resembled a line of thick mist, as thick as a middling tree, which reached not in a straight line almost to the water's edge, and in a few minutes totally disappeared. Its distance, I suppose, made it appear so trifling, as the seamen judged it not less than 2 or 3 miles from us. Many birds about the ship, pintado, common, and southern albatross. 1769, August 25. Less wind today, but the swell occasioned by yesterday's wind still troublesome. Birds today about the ship, pintado, common, and southern albatross, and a shearwater in size and shape like the common, but grey or whitish on the head and back. It was this day a 12-month since we left England, in consequence of which a piece of Cheshire cheese was taken from a locker where it had been reserved for this occasion, and a cask of porter tapped, which proved excellently good, so that we lived like Englishmen and drank the healths of our friends in England. 1769, August 26. Few birds today, chiefly albatrosses, few pintados. In the evening several grampuses about the ship. 1769, August 27. Pleasant breeze. Birds today as plentiful as ever. Albatrosses of both kinds, pintados, and grey shearwaters. Birds as yesterday. 1769, August 28. Birds as yesterday, with the addition of a kind of shearwater, quite black, the same as was seen and shot on the 21st of March last in our passage to the westward. P. atrata. Tupaya not well today. He complains of a pain in his stomach. His distemper probably proceeds from cold, of which we have for some days past had more than from our latitude we should have expected. One of the seamen, Raden by name, was this morn found so drunk that he had scarce any signs of life, and in about an hour he expired. Where he could have got his liquor is a mystery, which however nobody seems to inquire into, probably not fairly. I have more than once had occasion to congratulate myself on my prudence in not taking wine on board at Madeira, as I believe I may safely say that there is not a cask on board the ship that has not been tapped, to the great dissatisfaction of the owners, who in general have had the comfort to find the gentlemen honest enough not to have filled up with salt water. In some cases, however, this was not a consideration of much comfort, as many of the casks were 2/3 empty, and some quite. 1769, August 29. Very moderate and pleasant. Scarce any motion. Few or no birds about the ship. In the course of last night a phenomenon was seen in the heavens, which Mr. Green says is either a comet or a nebulous. He does not know which. The seamen have observed it these 3 nights. 1769, August 30. Our comet is this morn acknowledged, and proves a very large one, but very faint. Tupaya, as soon as he saw it, declared that the people of Bolabola would upon the sight of it kill the people of Ulhiatia, who would, as many as could, fly into the mountains. More sea today than yesterday heaving in from west-southwest. Several birds, pintados, albatrosses of both kinds. The little silver-backed bird, which we saw off Falkland Islands and Cape Horn, P.R. velox, and grey shearwater. Peter saw a green bird about the size of a dove. The colour makes us hope that it is a land bird. It took, however, not the least notice of the ship. Some seaweed was also seen to pass by the ship, but as it was a very small piece, our hopes are not very sanguine on that head. The thermometer today 52, which pinches us much who are so lately come from a country where it was seldom less than 80. A swell from southwest. 1769, August 31. Blows fresh this morn with a good deal of sea. About 7 in the morn a heap of seaweed passed the ship. An immense quantity of birds are about her today. Albatrosses of both kinds, which are easily distinguished one from the other by their beaks, which in one is white and in the other black. Also large black shearwaters, and a smaller sort with greybacks, pintados. But above all, many millions, I may safely say, of the small bird mentioned yesterday, about as large as a dove, greyish on the back, some with dark-coloured mark going in a crooked direction on that and its wings. I tried today to catch some of these numerous attendants with a hook, but after the whole morning spent in the attempt, caught only one pintado, which proved to be Procelaria capensis of Linnaeus. End of section 18. August 1769.